Welcome to this edition of the Capital Brief. I'm Seth Berenzweig from Berenzweig Leonard here in our beautiful BL Media studio in downtown Tysons, Virginia. Back again today with our friend and colleague from RealClear Markets, John Tamny. John, how you doing today?
Great. Good to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to be talking today about a topic that is a pretty popular topic, but it happened to come up again recently by our old friend Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal together with other executives going through the notion of whether smart machine learning, high-tech robots are something that is either helpful or unhelpful, productive or counterproductive to the economy, and what kind of strategy or regulation Washington should be thinking about from that standpoint as it relates to the economy. Can you tell us a little bit about what that article is and what the theory is on the table that we're talking about today?
Well, the theory that they're offering is that machines are not just automating human activity at this point, they are thinking. It's not just that machines can beat Garry Kasparov in chess. It's that these machines can devise an all-new way of playing chess in order to beat him. In terms of healthcare, these machines can come up with ways of creating a cell or coming up with a healthcare advance that humans never could. They're that fast, so they're actually outthinking humans. Their fear is that as machines become exponentially more powerful, which is the expectation they are, is will they gain control in some sort of way, as in could machines fight battles on the battlefields that would prove incredibly bad for humanity, as in could they launch attacks on other people in ways.
And also with respect to the economy and with respect to the job sector, the fear is whether or not automation, machines, and machine learning would pose a risk to economic growth for people to be able to get back to a satisfactory level of employment, and not have machine learning and robots have a displacing effect in terms of the growth of the economy and employment in the United States. That was something that I also read into your analysis of that article that you very interestingly wrote about in RealClear Markets recently. So that's part of the hypothesis as well?
Yeah, there's that ever-present fear that automation is going to put people into bread lines, which is thoroughly baseless. I mean, I think probably a good jumping off point is if we'd all been born 175 years ago, we kind of had a binary choice in life. We were either going to be farmers or something else somewhat related to it. Human endeavor was so limited at this point that just about all human effort was directed toward just the creation of food and not making enough of it. And then along comes fertilizer, along come tractors, arguably the original robots that were arguably the biggest job destroyers in the history of mankind. I mean, again, suddenly a world that had essentially one profession in many instances didn't.
Right.
Did this put people into bread lines? No, it freed remarkable human advance because suddenly, rather than people wasting their time making food or trying to mass produce not enough food, they were focused on healthcare advances, on the creation of the automobile, on the creation of the computer, on teaching, on entertainment. That which destroys jobs propels us. It doesn't, and it propels us to much better work, not into bread lines.
So fast forward this issue into the present time. There are concerns that I have seen in a variety of different contexts, and there have been a number of specials that have been on CNBC, Netflix, and a variety of other outlets, providing an argument that AI, artificial intelligence, and the advance of automation and robots is going to have and will have in certain aspects of the economy a very negative effect from an unemployment perspective. Example, truck driving. There have been a lot of advances with regard to autonomous vehicles. And there have been arguments and different theories put out that the truck driving industry is forever going to be changed, because people who have spent their whole lives working hard and having this industry, that as well as certain other segments of the economy, people are going to be replaced by machines. People driving vehicles, people in assembly lines. The robots are coming. The robots are coming, and that it does put people in certain industries in some kind of potential challenging situation, because they may be displaced in a requirement where they may need to acquire certain skills. When you take a look at those arguments that are really prevalent out there, and frankly, the advent of AI is as hot as ever. What's your response to that position, that this is something that really poses a real present and material risk from an employment standpoint?
Oh, let's hope. What a dream. Oh, wait, technology is going to destroy old forms of work? I mean, my first response is, when has technology not done that? By its very name, it's displacing humans and freeing them to specialize more. The arrival of women into the workforce didn't put people out of work. It just brought more human capital into the workforce so that people could specialize more. The Chinese used to be a desperately poor people. Now they're increasingly prosperous. Did they put Americans out of work? No, they just enhanced by bringing their hands into the workplace. They made it possible for Americans to specialize more and more. It used to be that Americans had to work in factories. It used to be that Americans quite literally had to follow horse and buggies around and pick up manure. Thank goodness they don't have to do those forms of work anymore. Technology is always about pushing the past into the past, but this doesn't put people into unemployment lines. It frees them to do work that is much more associated with their unique skills and intelligence.
So what it does is it ultimately, to the extent that it creates job displacement, it also creates new job creation opportunity. It provides for greater creativity and to be able to leverage down on the technology so that people can do less manual labor and be able to create new work and new things.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine for me, I think about it all the time, if I'd been born 175 years ago, I would have been viewed as incredibly lazy, stupid, and probably a burden on whatever family I was part of, because nothing I understand or care about or know about has to do with farming. And so it would have been a very difficult world, but in modern times, precisely because we've automated away so much work that used to be intensely miserable, it's freed people to more and more specialize. There's this myth nowadays that factory jobs are so great. Well, it's so interesting. You look at people like Tony Dorsett, the Hall of Fame running back. What did his father say to him growing up in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania? He said, "You come into these factories," because he worked in them, the J&L steel factories. He said, you may not come out with your life, but if you do come out, you're going to be maimed in certain ways. His father said to him and his brothers, "Get out of here." Mike Ditka's parents, they all grew up in Aliquippa. Get out of here. These jobs, that they would force their kids to spend summers in the J&L mills so they could realize just how miserable their work was. These parents were working factory jobs so that their kids wouldn't have to.
Wow.
And so to pretend that this was somehow glamorous, these old forms of work, is just naive.
It's interesting, you know, I remember, and I keep dating myself whenever I start a sentence with "I remember," then I already know that I'm going to be dating myself. But there was a time when there really weren't a ton of ATM machines around. And the prevalence of ATMs today are at such a point that if you walk around a block or two and you can't find one, you find it to be almost irritating and stunning. But I remember when there was a great proliferation of ATM machines. And the talking point around that was that this was going to trigger immediate unemployment with bank tellers. It was going to change the financial industry in a way where people in the banking industry were going to be displaced, and now people would just step up to a nondescript machine and no one would be needed at the bank. First of all, there are still ample bank tellers in all the banks that I go into. But in addition to that, rather than triggering unemployment for bank tellers, it has resulted in increased employment for for programmers, for people who help with the hardware, with the software, with the upgrading and the programming of ATMs. And now you have new industries with decentralized finance, so-called DeFi, where you have a creation of a whole new niche, a very powerful niche, where you have the creation of whole new industries, whole new companies, new high-quality jobs, underemployment, in fact, because there are so many new opportunities. So when I can't help but think of that as an example in support of your point that, machines, to look at automation and machines and to say that it's going to create unemployment rather than opportunity is really a pretty short-sighted vision.
Oh, most definitely very short-sighted, because it ignores that all machines are just extra hands, and work divided is work that's much more specialized. Machines don't put us out of work. They just remove from work all the awful things about it and allow us to focus more and more what we want to do. I mean, let's look at FedEx as an example. The view was that the fax machine, imagine that, the fax machine, what was FedEx going to do? It couldn't move documents around the country anymore.
Right.
But FedEx evolved, it continues to grow, it becomes more valuable. There's just different...
Said the same thing about email, right?
Email, of course, was going to put people out of work.
Yeah.
It's all a computer is an extra set of hands. Look at the movie 9 to 5. Let's date ourselves again. So Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. And
we're going to have to get some Geritol after this show.
Right. But you see that initial scene in it it's just a big bunch of it's a secretarial pool.
Yeah.
Well, that's gone too.
Sure.
Now, did that put women who were largely secretaries out of work? No, it freed them to do much better, much more advanced work. And so there's this desire to say that we are at the frontier in terms of our ability to be productive and creative. But in fact, there is no frontier for that. And the more that we can automate the past, the more that we can focus on work that we never imagined doing.
Yeah. And I think that one of the pieces of this puzzle that you're talking about, of course, and it's implicitly as part of the story, but let's just bring it out explicitly, is AI, this artificial intelligence that continues to not create the displacement as much as it creates opportunity. I was thinking, and just taking a couple of quick notes before the show today, thinking about examples of new company exploration and new industries that have been created thanks to AI. There is a company that I'm familiar with that you're reminding me of called UiPath. It's publicly traded, PATH. It provides smart automation of back office support functions for companies so that people who are in the office can operate more effectively and more creatively. Also talking about other specific tangible examples about AI making the world a more efficient place. Tesla uses AI for its autopilot system, although, of course, that's still under development. The credit reporting industry is being turned upside down by AI. There's a company called Upstart, ticker symbol UPST. It's a company that is another DeFi entity that has created a blockbuster industry by really redoing the method of credit reporting, where instead of going through just generic, robotic, blockheaded number calculation with regard to credit scores, they use more smart technology to create a more integrated, updated, AI-based credit score that not only frees up a lot of the boring number crunching, but actually provides arguably for an improved credit reporting, which frees up more capital for small businesses in America. So have you seen an example that you find interesting of where AI has kind of come in and has created new opportunities for new jobs or more scientific advancement or something of that nature?
Well, as we both know, there are no companies and no jobs without investment or access to capital first. And so kind of along the lines of what you've just talked about, I can't remember if I brought this up the other week when we talked about crypto, but Ant Group in China, they've got such good automated access to credit that they've got this 311 system. A business without pledging any collateral can take 3 minutes to register with Ant Group's financial loan system It takes a minute to be approved and then a minute for the money to show up in your account. Now, so they do this, and again, in 5 minutes, you've got money to progress whatever it is you're doing with your business.
Right.
Now, people would say, well, that's awfully quick, but they've got such good access to data that, in fact, the default rates on this are much lower than traditional bank loans.
Right.
Will this put banks out of business? No, people always want to have their hands held in terms of financial matters and everything. But to your exact point, it's more and more going to be the case that money, capital will get to individuals and businesses much more quickly. And then you look at that in terms of healthcare. Kissinger and Schmidt and Hintlocker talked about how the automation of this is going to basically lap doctors in terms of coming up with answers for things. Think about how exciting this is. Humans have driven all progress. Imagine the greatest physicians in the world with machines working next to them. Who's to say that in the future paralysis won't be taken care of, that cancer, all these known killers or things that really harm our lives irretrievably, that have the potential to be fixed thanks to humans working with machines. It's really a beautiful future.
You know, you remind me of another amazing example of using smarter automation and technology. There's another company, just continue to talk about some cool publicly traded companies. There's a company, Cassava Sciences, the ticker SAVA. Cassava Sciences is using technology to create new methods to address Alzheimer's disease. And the company is in an FDA phase 3 study where they believe, fair disclosure, I should say that I hold some of the stock. I don't want the FBI coming in tomorrow and saying I'm pumping and dumping, although I'm not. But the company is getting close to the first medical technology to provide cognitive repair, not just stopping the disease, cognitive repair for Alzheimer's disease, one of the most devastating diseases that is fatal. So, you know, you're raising not only a fascinating point, but such an optimistic one. In your article that I really enjoyed reading in RealClear Markets, entitled "Henry Kissinger Writes with Worry About a Future That Will Be Brilliant," and I think that we're really kind of touching on a lot of these creative methods right now. In conclusion, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to in terms of some of the advances that you see coming in terms of AI, robotics, things that are happening in the workplace that's going to continue to create material positive change in the American workforce?
Well, I love the question because my third book, which I'm still sad to this day, is called The End of Work. But I had titled it when I wrote it, The End of Laziness. What's most exciting to me about the advent of robotics and AI is that I truly believe we are on the verge of Americans broadly falling in love with work, where Monday is the most exciting day of the week because they get to go do a job that greatly reflects what's unique about them, that elevates them, their unique brilliance.
Creativity.
And that's what I think is the future. People always ask, well, so what are the jobs of the future? And to know would be to be a billionaire, but we were once agricultural, we moved on from that. Manufacturing, thankfully, we moved on from that. Now we're a service industry.
Right.
My guess is that the economy of the future is going to be called the entertainment economy. We will have automated away a lot of our productive needs, thank goodness. And so more and more people will get to do for a living what they couldn't get enough of growing up. They will entertain people in certain ways. They will do what it is, what narrowly elevates them. And so we'll suddenly see that no one was ever stupid or lazy, but there wasn't enough economic growth to support the kinds of ways in which they could showcase their genius.
And their intellectual creativity, right?
Yeah, I think everyone's got creativity in them.
Yep.
It's just historically it was a very, very few jobs that you could do.
Right.
Now it's expanding all the time. So to me, the most exciting thing, and I wish I could be around 100, 200 years from now, we talk today about, oh, you do that, they pay you to do that.
Yeah.
100, 200 years from now, if we maintain this, what people will do for a living will stagger us for how, what they pay. That's a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
So that to me is
Yeah,
unquestionably.
it's so cool, and I would apply that to DeFi and blockchain. I think that, and I know that we touched upon this a little bit last week, the whole element of DeFi and blockchain, and how there's going to be new smart contracts and how to create industries that float off of that, is something that's going to create so much wealth in so many ways in terms of employment, new companies, investment in certain cryptocurrencies. You have to be careful if you go into that market, but in certain cryptocurrencies, that there's just so many different pathways to create. And it reminds me of a book by Dan Pink, one of the famous business authors, not as cool as you are, of course, but a good guy who was talking about a scientific experiment where in one side people were being rewarded just by given pure tokens of reward, but in another side of the lab, people were not given any reward, but they were given a puzzle. And the people who were given the puzzle with no reward were far more productive because they were being intellectually engaged. They were being intellectually challenged. And that creativity, that pent-up creativity to do something that they find interesting really kind of aligns with what you're talking about. And there are a lot of creative people out there that are probably waiting to be engaged in something that they really find interesting. So this whole topic is endlessly fascinating to me. But I know that we're out of time. So great seeing you again,
Yes.
and we'll talk to you soon.